The Swede, tightly gripping his valise, tacked across the face of the storm as if he carried sails. He was following a line of little naked, gasping trees, which he knew must mark the way of the road. His face, fresh from the pounding of Johnny's fists, felt more pleasure than pain in the wind and the driving snow. A number of square shapes loomed upon him finally, and he knew them as the houses of the main body of the town. He found a street and made travel along it, leaning heavily upon the wind whenever, at a corner, a terrific blast caught him. He might have been in a deserted village. We picture the world as thick with conquering and elate humanity. But here, with the bugles of the tempest pealing, it was hard to imagine a peopled earth. One viewed the existence of man then as a marvel, and conceded a glamour of wonder to these lice, which were caused to cling to a whirling, fire-smote, ice-locked, disease-stricken, space-lost bulb. The conceit of man was explained by this storm to be the very engine of life. One was a coxcomb not to die in it. However, the Swede found a saloon. In front of it, an indomitable red light was burning, and the snowflakes were made blood-color as they flew through the circumscribed territory of the lamp's shining. The Swede pushed open the door of the saloon and entered. A sanded expanse was before him, and at the end of it 4 men sat about a table, drinking. Down one side of the room extended a radiant bar, and its guardian was leaning upon his elbows, listening to the talk of the men at the table. The Swede dropped his valise upon the floor, and, smiling fraternally upon the barkeeper, said, "Give me some whiskey, will you?" The men placed a bottle, a whiskey glass, and a glass of ice-thick water upon the bar. The Swede poured himself an abnormal portion of whiskey and drank it in 3 gulps. "Pretty bad night," remarked the bartender indifferently. He was making the pretension of blindness, which is usually a distinction of his class. But it could have been seen that he was furtively studying the half-erased bloodstains on the face of the Swede. "Bad night," he said again. "Oh, it's good enough for me," replied the Swede, heartily, as he poured himself some more whiskey. The barkeeper took his coin and maneuvered it through its reception by the highly nickeled cash machine. A bell rang. A card labeled 20 cents had appeared. "No," continued the Swede, "this isn't too bad weather. It's good enough for me." "So?" murmured the barkeeper languidly. The copious drams made the Swede's eyes swim, and he breathed a trifle heavier. "Yes, I like this weather. I like it. It suits me." It was apparently his design to impart a deep significance to these words. "So?" murmured the bartender again. He turned his gaze dreamily at the scroll-like birds and the bird-like scrolls, which had been drawn with soap upon the mirrors back of the bar. "Well, I guess I'd take another drink," said the Swede presently. "Have something?" "No, thanks. I'm not drinking," answered the bartender. Afterwards, he asked, "How'd you hurt your face?" The Swede immediately began to boast loudly. "Why, in a fight. I thumped the soul out of a man down there at Scully's Hotel." The interest of the 4 men at the table was at last aroused. "Who was it?" said one. "Johnny Scully," blustered the Swede. "Son of the man what runs it. He'll be pretty near dead for some weeks, I can tell you. I made a nice thing of him, I did. He couldn't get up. They carried him in the house." Have a drink?" Instantly the men, in some subtle way, encased themselves in reserve. "No thanks," said one. The group was of curious formation. Two were prominent local businessmen. One was the district attorney, and one was a professional gambler of the kind known as square. But a scrutiny of the group would not have enabled an observer to pick the gambler from the men of more reputable pursuits. He was, in fact, a man so delicate in manner, when among people of fair class, and so judicious in his choice of victims, that in the strictly masculine part of the town's life, he had come to be explicitly trusted and admired. People called him a thoroughbred. The fear and contempt with which his craft was regarded was undoubtedly the reason that his quiet dignity shone conspicuous above the quiet dignity of men who might be merely hatters, billiard-makers, or grocery clerks. Beyond an occasional unwary traveler who came by the rail, this gambler was supposed to prey solely upon reckless and senile farmers, who, when flush with good crops, drove into town in all the pride and confidence of an absolutely invulnerable stupidity. Hearing at times in circuitous fashion of the despoilment of such a farmer, the important men of Romper invariably laughed in contempt of the victim, and, if they thought of the wolf at all, it was with a kind of pride at the knowledge that he would never dare think of attacking their wisdom and courage. Besides, it was popular that this gambler had a real wife and two real children in a neat cottage in a suburb, where he led an exemplary home life. And when anyone even suggested a discrepancy in his character, the crowd immediately vociferated descriptions of this virtuous family circle. Then, men who led exemplary home lives and men who did not lead exemplary home lives all subsided in a bunch, remarking that there was nothing more to be said. However, when a restriction was placed upon him, as, for instance, when a strong clique of members of the new Pollywog Club refused to permit him, even as a spectator, to appear in the rooms of the organization, the candor and gentleness with which he accepted the judgment disarmed many of his foes, and made his friends more desperately partisan. He invariably distinguished himself between himself and a respectable romper man, so quickly and frankly that his manner actually appeared to be a continual broadcast compliment. And one must not forget to declare the fundamental fact of his entire position in Romper. It is irrefutable that in all affairs outside of his business, in all matters that occur eternally and commonly between man and man, this thieving card player was so generous, so just, so moral, that, in a contest, he could have put to flight the consciences of 9/10 of the citizens of Romper. And so it happened that he was seated in the saloon with the two prominent local merchants and the district attorney. The Swede continued to drink raw whiskey, meanwhile babbling at the barkeeper and trying to induce him to indulge in potations. "Come on, have a drink, come on. What, no? Well, have a little one then, by God. I whipped a man tonight, and I want to celebrate. I whipped him good, too. Gentlemen," the Swede cried to the men at the table, "have a drink?" "Shh," said the barkeeper. The group at the table, although furtively attentive, had been pretending to be deep in talk. But now a man lifted his eyes towards the Swede and said shortly, "Thanks, we don't want any more." At this reply the Swede ruffled out his chest like a rooster. "Well," he exploded, "it seems I can't get anybody to drink with me in this town. Seems so, don't it? Well." "Shh," said the barkeeper. Say, snarled the Swede, don't you try and shut me up. I won't have it. I'm a gentleman, and I want people to drink with me. And I want them to drink with me. No! No! Do you understand? He rapped the bar with his knuckles. Years of experience had calloused the bartender. He merely grew sulky. I hear you, he answered. Well, cried the Swede, listen hard then. See those men over there? Well, they're going to drink with me. And don't you forget it. Now you watch. Hi, yelled the bartender. This won't do. Why won't it? Demanded the Swede. He stalked over to the table, and by chance laid his hand upon the shoulder of the gambler. How about this? He asked wrathfully. I asked you to drink with me. The gambler simply twisted his head and spoke over his shoulder. My friend, I don't know you. Ah, hell, answered the Swede. Come here, have a drink. Now, my boy, advised the gambler kindly, take your hand off my shoulder and go away and mind your own business. He was a little slim man, and it seemed strange to hear him use this tone of heroic patronage to the burly Swede. The other men at the table said nothing. What? You won't drink with me, you little dude? I'll make you then, I'll make you. The Swede had grasped the gambler frenziedly at the throat and was dragging him from his chair. The other man sprang up. The bartender dashed around the corner of the bar. There was a great tumult, and then was seen a long blade in the hand of the gambler. It shot forward, and a human body, this citadel of virtue, wisdom, power, was pierced as easily as if it had been a melon. The Swede fell with a cry of supreme astonishment. The prominent merchants of the district attorney must have at once tumbled out of the place backward. The bartender found himself hanging limply to the arm of a chair and gazing into the eyes of a murderer. Henry, said the latter, as he wiped his knife on one of the towels that hung beneath the bar rail. You tell him where to find me. I'll be home, waiting for him. Then he vanished. A moment afterwards, the barkeeper was in the street, dinning through the storm for help, and, moreover, companionship. The corpse of the Swede, alone in the saloon, had its eyes fixed upon a dreadful legend that dwelt atop of the cash machine. This registers the amount of your purchase.